Hey, all my world history students, welcome back to another video in my series on the Roman world and Christianity. Hope you guys are doing all right out there. In this video today, we are going to take a look at how Christianity expanded throughout the big cities of the Roman Empire. So picking up where we left off, in previous videos, the material that was pertinent to our conversation today, we talked about the expansion of Rome and how within that massive Roman Empire, it included the Kingdom of Judea, which was the homeland of the Jewish people. And this is also where Christianity started. Now, we discussed in another video traditional Roman religion. That religion was polytheistic and based off of Greek mythology. So they had a whole series of gods and goddesses that were based off of the Greek gods and goddesses. Now, in Roman society, they created a link between the emperor and the religion. Effectively, the imperial cult saw the emperor as a god himself, and this helped establish and maintain more control over the people in their society. And to help maintain control and to integrate those people that they conquered in their empire, they also integrated many of the gods and goddesses from the regions and the lands that they conquered. So places like Egypt, Persia, and Gaul had many of their religious beliefs integrated into the Roman religious ideas. And finally, in my last video, we talked about the origins and beliefs of Christianity. Remember, this was founded by the main man of the religion, Jesus of Nazareth. He is a historical figure. There are records about him. But anyway, his religious beliefs were rooted in Judaism. So you had these concepts of monotheism, the Ten Commandments, and the Old Testament. Also remember that Jesus' teachings were written down by the apostles, his 12 closest followers. And those men wrote the Gospels, which were the first 4 books of the New Testament, which is where we know most of the information that we know about Jesus and his life. Then finally, remember, because Jesus' beliefs, especially the belief of monotheism, challenged all of these traditional Roman beliefs and that link between the religion and the government, because it challenged those things, Jesus was put to death for his beliefs. So anyway, after you had Jesus put to death, a lot of his Jewish followers began to develop a new religion based on his teachings. Remember, Jesus remained a Jewish man throughout his entire life, and his followers, pretty much all of his followers, were Jewish people. But after his death, a lot of people began to view him as the Messiah, as the Savior, and they began to form this new religion based on his teachings. And one of his most important followers, a man that you need to know, remember this name, his name was the Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul was originally a man who opposed Jesus and the mission of Christianity. However, after he met with him in Syria, Apostle Paul actually began to dedicate his life to spreading Jesus' message. And it became very easy for him to spread those ideas because of this Roman peace, the Pax Romana. Remember, we talked about it in a previous video, the fact that under the Roman Empire, they oversaw this 200-year period of peace and prosperity. And they had a whole system of roads that made trade and interconnectivity among different regions of their empire very easy. So when goods and services can travel very easily and safely throughout the empire, so can ideas. And this is what helped the Apostle Paul to spread his mission. Now, another thing that helped him out was that there were 2 primary languages spoken in the Roman Empire. Those were Greek in the eastern half of the empire, and then Latin in the western half of the empire. And he wrote his ideas, the epistles, in both of those languages. Paul also was one of the first to really see Christianity as its own separate religion. He stressed this notion that Jesus was the Son of God, and then he also argued that non-Jewish converts, so people that weren't just Jewish people, but converts to the religion, could follow Christianity as well. He opened up the religion to all those different people, and that really helped spread it throughout the empire. Finally, as I discussed in the last video, Christianity had a real emphasis on charity, community, and being kind to one another. And that really made it appeal to the poor members of society as opposed to the Roman religion. One thing to keep in mind about Roman religion was that animal sacrifice and sacrifices of gifts and goods to the gods were seen as very important to keeping good standing in the Roman religion. The only problem with that was the people that could afford to make these sacrifices were all the really rich and wealthy people. So a lot of people felt like the religion favored them. Those poor people couldn't afford to sacrifice any animals because they didn't have any animals to sacrifice. So because of that, they began to flock more to religions like Christianity and Judaism. All right, so speaking of Judaism, I'm going to digress from the spread of Christianity for a second and talk a little bit about what happened to Judaism and the Jewish people under the Roman Empire. So I mentioned in the previous video, the Roman Empire conquered the kingdom of Judea in the year 6 CE. And the Jewish people didn't necessarily appreciate this. They didn't like being ruled over by a separate people, especially a separate people that tried to enforce their religion on them. And they had two failed rebellions. The first one here was in the year 66 CE. This was an unfortunate failed rebellion. The Romans came through, they set their legions down to Judea, and they destroyed much of the land, much of the city of Jerusalem, which was their capital, including the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. The only part of it that they didn't destroy was the famous Western Wall of that temple, which still stands there today and is considered the most important holy site in the Jewish religion. In that rebellion, about 500,000 Jewish people were killed over the span of 7 years. The Jewish people had another failed rebellion in the year 132 CE, and again, in this rebellion, about 500,000 Jewish people were killed in the failed rebellion. Now, the Jewish religion survived. People still practiced and worshipped and believed this religion, but what happened is the Jewish people were kicked out of their homeland. They were kicked out and dispersed throughout the world, and that's kind of our next important vocabulary term you need to know about right here is the diaspora. All right, the diaspora represents the dispersal of Jewish people from their homeland all around the world, and they would never actually settle into their own kingdom again for another 1,800 years. It wasn't until after World War II in the 1940s and the United Nations creation of the independent state of Jerusalem would the Jewish people have their own homeland again. All right, last topic I want to talk about here is the persecution of the Christian people. So with the assistance of people like the Apostle Paul and then other people in the cities throughout the Roman Empire, Christianity began to spread. And like I mentioned before, it remained very popular among the poor in society. Now, Christian monotheism posed a threat to the Roman religion and government, at least in the eyes of the government officials of the Roman Empire. Because remember, they sought to control their population by linking the religion to the empire. This whole idea of seeing the emperor as a god was an idea that helped to maintain more control over those people. If you wanted to, get into heaven and have a good afterlife, you would have to worship and obey the God on earth, who is the emperor. Well, the problem with that, with Christianity and Judaism as well, was that they only saw one God. They were monotheistic. So they didn't view the emperor as a god. In fact, they viewed him as a man posing as a false god. And because of this, Christians were often blamed as scapegoats. They were put as the blame for many of the political and economic troubles that would start to arise as the Pax Romana began to fade away. The most famous example of this was the Emperor Nero, who blamed Christians for starting the Great Roman Fire of the year 64 CE. This fire burnt down nearly the entire city, and Nero blamed it on Christian people without really any proof or evidence that it was them. So anyway, because of all this, the Roman emperors, a lot of them began to persecute and go after Christian people. And they had these people that were known as martyrs. Martyrs are people who are willing to die in order to support and maintain their beliefs. Those Christian martyrs would say, I will not renounce, I will not give up my Christian faith and beliefs in exchange for my life. And because of this, many of them were put to death in extremely brutal ways in a lot of cases. I'm sorry if this picture on the slide here is, a little disturbing to anyone, but the three most common ways that Christians were put to death, Christian martyrs, was either A, crucifixion, where they were, just like Jesus, nailed to the cross and left to die. B, very commonly at the public venues, they were often burned alive. Or C, a lot of times as part of the circuses or the gladiator games, they would have Christian prisoners literally put them out there against wild lions and wild bears and have them killed alive by wild animals. And that's exactly what you're seeing in this photo right here. You can see, not a photo, but a painting. You can see Christian men being burnt alive in the background, and then Christian prisoners huddling and praying to their God while the Roman emperor sicked the lions on them. But this idea of harshly punishing the Christian followers, the intent from the emperor was to squash the religion. For anyone who is looking on to see, wow, I don't want to end up like those people. I'm not going to practice Christianity. I'm going to keep listening to the emperor. In fact, it had the opposite effect in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, these martyrs influenced more people to look up to them and say, wow, look at what these brave people are doing just for the sake of their religion. And it actually started to attract more people into the religion. All right, so in summary, some of the key takeaways from this video. First of all, as I mentioned before, the Pax Romana very much helped enable the spread of ideas like Christianity. Because remember, goods could travel through trade very easily through the empire, through the Roman roads and through the sea routes for trade. But along with goods, they could spread ideas like Christianity. And also it helped that you had two common religions, Greek and Latin, where these ideas could spread. Second, one of the most, probably maybe the most important man in the spread of early Christianity was the Apostle Paul. Third, those early Christian martyrs, they were heavily persecuted for their beliefs, but this attracted many more people to the religion. And then finally, remember, Christianity first took root among the poor in those big Roman cities. And that's kind of what you see in this map here. Notice this first map. This shows the spread of Christianity in 325 CE. And you can see all these little orange pockets. This is where Christianity was really located. So around Jerusalem, then around a lot of the big cities like Constantinople, Antioch, Ephesus, in Rome over here. All right, so in those big cities. But by the year 500 CE, we take a look at this map over here. Within the next 175 years, Christianity would be the predominant religion throughout much of the land that was previously controlled by the Roman Empire. And the reason why that happened is what we're going to take a look at in my next video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Again, hope you guys are staying safe and staying healthy out there. I really miss seeing you guys all in class. But again, I hope you guys are at least enjoying these videos that I'm sending out. And make sure you start paying attention this week to the material that I'm putting out there on Remind and in Canvas and in View. Because distance learning starting up again next week. I can't wait to get back into it. All right? You guys take care out there. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and enjoy yourself. Later.